Ready to go? Still got 1 more minute left. So ladies and gentlemen, we're going to go ahead and start. And thanks to everyone who's joined us here today. And I want to tell, my name is Matt Caddo. I'm the Senior Fellow on Public Policy with the American Kratom Association. And we're here today at the Tampa Bay Times because we believe that the truth about kratom really needs to be clarified, and some of the information that has been disseminated over the past several stories by the Tampa Bay Times simply needs correction. Now, this isn't the first time that we've had an anti-kratom story published in the news media. We expect that that occasionally will happen, but this is the first time that we've seen a series of articles that are backed by months of research and effort by the Tampa Bay Times reporters so egregiously misstate the case and the truth about kratom. And we think that the time has come for us to give voice to those who are ignored by the Tampa Bay Times story. We've tried over the past months that they have been reporting about kratom and doing their investigation to share with the Tampa Bay Times the voices of kratom. And here in Florida, it is a substantial marketplace for kratom because people have found it to be something that helps them, not in the demonized way that some hear about it. And so to give voice to Florida kratom consumers, I'd like to first invite Jackie Pulaski, who is a resident of this area, to tell her story about how kratom has helped her and changed her life. Jackie?
Good morning, good afternoon. My name's Jackie, and I'm absolutely honored to be here today. Speaking on behalf of a friend I just lost last week due to the disease of addiction. He was 36 years old, and he was a big part of our community, which he just couldn't get through last week, and was fighting this disease of addiction for a while. I'm actually an emergency room nurse here in the Tampa Bay area, and on a daily basis, every single night, I see people coming in with mental health and overdoses. Sometimes they come in twice a shift, and I wish that, you know, there was some times that I could tell them about, you know, about kratom and how it's impacted me in a positive way. I've been utilizing it for almost 8 years. I was someone that suffered with depression and substance issues for almost 10 years. I mean, really struggled, 23 rehabs, the whole shebang, okay? And I was a hopeless case, but when I moved to St. Pete, I got introduced to some people that were in the community, and my whole life has changed. I never thought that I would finish my nursing degree, and I never thought that I would work in the ER of all places, but I believe things happen for a reason in their own timing. And this article that came out by Tampa Bay Times, you know, where's the evidence? Where is the data to show that the information that they're sharing is actually accurate? So I'm here today to represent that this is a positive thing in my life, and I will stand for it, and I'm just grateful to be here today, guys, so thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Jackie. Another voice that was ignored, unfortunately, a Florida resident, Glenn Shipe. I'd like to ask Glenn to come up and share his story that contradicts what you read in the Tampa Bay Times. He's fine. He can stand right here. Hold it close to your mouth. Hold it close.
I wouldn't be here today if it wasn't for kratom. A member of my family took his own life. I found him. Member of my family took his own life. I wouldn't be here without kratom. As you can see, I had surgeries on my back. and I was in so much pain. I was an alcoholic. I was on pain pills, went to my doctor. In fact, I overdosed, and he had me on tramadol. And I asked him about kratom. He said, I want you to take that instead. I did. I'm here. And I traveled pretty far. To be here. And I wouldn't be, I was addicted and I was depressed. I would have taken my own life. I got off the pain pills. I'm on kratom, and I'll never take anything that is detrimental to me again. And all the things in the Tampa Bay Times was just, I never seen something like that in my life. So thank you and for everything, and I'll give it back to Mac. Thank you so much.
Glenn, thank you very much. Our problem with much of the story that was published in the series on Tampa Bay Times so far is how it stigmatizes the kratom community. It takes the FDA's position and overlays it on all of the people, the 15 million Americans who safely and responsibly use kratom today, and makes them into some kind of enemy of. And we believe that that is completely wrong and the wrong approach for people that are struggling. So I'd like to invite John Shinsholzer to speak for a few moments. John is the President Emeritus and the founder of the McShin Foundation, which is the largest nonprofit addiction recovery program in Virginia, who himself found kratom in the course of his addiction recovery efforts with clients that he was working with. John.
Thank you, Mac. You know, when I first read that article, and the multiple articles, the first thing that came to my mind was, holy smoke, they just stigmatized millions of Americans, millions of adult responsible consumers of this product. And I'm thinking, I wonder if they realize what they just did, because I've been fighting the battle of stigma associated with addiction for decades. And then I got to thinking, don't they know about the millions of opiate addicts that found a solution to their addiction, how they were able to shift from a contaminated drug supply, fentanyl, that's killing so many Americans, and they found a plant, you know, that was the solution to their problems. And then my knowledge of all the other folks struggling with other addictions, whether it be alcohol, benzodiazepines, even Suboxone and methadone, that they found kratom is a less harmful solution to their problem. And then I was thinking further, historically, how the media and the press, you know, the last stalwart of our nation, how it's so important to get this right. So I'm thinking maybe the Tampa Bay Times can atone for such a lopsided story and go out and search the real truth and the real story about kratom, how it's saving millions of people's lives, it's healing families, and that even Nora Volkow with NIH even claims kratom might be the next best tool in the toolbox to reduce the deaths to fentanyl out there. You know, this is a plant. If it's consumed safely, it's practically harmless. This is not some China-made chemical that they're embedding in other products. This is something made by God to be consumed by humans for appropriate reasons and purposes. So, you know, I do ask the Tampa Bay Times, you know, do some more homework. Talk to this community standing behind me. You know, look to the AKA, the only organized association that I know of that's trying to get this product right, get the information right, get the science right. And speaking of science, for God's sake, follow the science. Science doesn't lie. This is not some anecdotal product that people are stumbling on in the middle of the night. No, this is evidence-backed science product, a plant that has many uses, and you got to get this right. And I want to talk to the kratom community themselves just for a minute. If you don't stand up and speak for your community, you can't leave it up to the FDA. You can't leave it up to the Suboxone doctors. You can't leave it up to the criminal justice system. And when you see a news article that doesn't feel right, look right, or sound right, you got to speak up. You got to be your own face and voice of recovery and your face and voice of the kratom community. And Mac, I can't thank AK enough for really organizing and bringing the truth to the surface. So if anybody deserves a prize, you should get a prize. So thank you.
Thank you, John. Appreciate it very much. As I said at the beginning, there are many things that we agree with the Tampa Bay Times on in terms of needing good regulations, proper labeling of products. But the premise of the story in this clickbait headline is what gives the problem clarity, because we live in a digital age, and when anyone searches about Kratom, they're going to pull this story up, this headline, which has no purpose other than to be a clickbait headline, sensationalized way beyond what the facts actually prove. The premise of the story, the entire premise of the story, is the FDA's claim that Kratom is deemed to be dangerous. And they quote it. They quote the FDA from that. Now, for context, it's important to know that the Tampa Bay Times has been following a story about a Kratom importer that's been indicted out in California. They absolutely know what's going on in that case. And I pointed out to them that in the course of that case, that the FDA had been ordered by a federal judge to show up and prove their claims about whether Kratom is dangerous. You can read those claims on their website at the FDA. You can look at the evidence. You can look back at the 2016 and repeated in 2017 application by the FDA to schedule Kratom as a Schedule I substance in the Controlled Substances Act. It says under Factor 6 that Kratom poses an imminent threat to the safety of the American people. And yet when they were asked by this federal judge, and the Tampa Bay Times knows it for a fact, the FDA responded saying that they refused to participate in the hearing ordered by the judge. And this is the important point. The reason they gave, according to the Assistant U.S. Attorney representing the FDA in this case, was that the FDA, have not yet made a determination regarding whether Kratom is dangerous. That is the entire premise of the Tampa Bay Times story. The Kratom is dangerous because the FDA says it is. And the FDA, when called before a federal judge, when asked to testify under oath to document their claim that Kratom is dangerous, they say, we're not going to do it because we, the FDA, have not yet come to the determination as to whether Kratom is dangerous or not. If you look at what the characterization by the Assistant Secretary for Health in August 16th of 2018, when the FDA made their application for scheduling, the Assistant Secretary for Health, who is the designated official to review all scheduling recommendations provided by the FDA and the National Institute on Drug Abuse, when he looked at the FDA's evidence, he said the FDA doesn't schedule, it only recommends, and the FDA's recommendation was rejected because of embarrassingly poor evidence and data and a failure to consider the overall public health. That's why we're here today, because the Tampa Bay Times reporters got seduced by the FDA's disinformation campaign, relying upon this embarrassingly poor evidence and data, which has now been called out by a federal judge, and the FDA finally has to come to account. They cannot say that Kratom is dangerous today and won't under oath because they haven't come to that determination, and it's because the evidence does not support it. It is clear. Dr. Joie told me personally he is not a Kratom advocate. He made the decision to withdraw that recommendation because he is an advocate for good science, and we believe that science should dictate this policy. You also look at the stories that was run in the Tampa Bay Times, where they say that based on medical examiner claims that there are 46 Kratom-only deaths in Florida. They highlighted that, they emphasized to it, and in repeated conversations I had with them, the Tampa Bay Times reporter, I tried to explain to them that in fact it is not supported by the evidence. The Tampa Bay Times reporters in their reporting deliberately excluded the following facts that destroy the credibility of the claim made by medical examiners. By the way, I'll tell you that these medical examiners are doing the best that they can with the resources that are provided to them. I am not going to make the claim, and the American Kratom Association is not going to make the claim that they're doing anything deliberately to mislead people. They just are following the bully pulpit that has been orchestrated in this Kratom disinformation campaign over the last decade by the Food and Drug Administration. But I pointed the Tampa Bay Times reporters to the Centers for Disease Control report that was issued in 2019, where they identified reports from medical examiners about whether metrogene, the alkaloid in the Kratom product, was responsible for the deaths as that were reported. And that report specifically said that of the 91 deaths, that were reported by medical examiners to be related and associated to kratom, that a significant number of them were actually because of fentanyl, heroin, cocaine, and other substances taken together. But the CDC report did say that there were 7 kratom-only deaths. And when that was examined, the CDC referenced a report that was published in the New England Journal of Medicine, which specifically looked at whether there was an accurate representation of a kratom-only death by a medical examiner's report. In that New England Journal of Medicine commentary, it involved the investigation by scientists in Colorado over a 10-year period of supposedly 15 kratom deaths. Of those, they found that 4 were kratom only. Nothing else was in their system, according to the medical examiners. What these researchers found was that when they did blood sample tests on 3 of the 4, one did not have a blood sample available, all proved with more sophisticated analytical tools to be polysubstance abuse. The individuals took other substances, they just didn't test for it. And so that's the problem. They didn't have sophisticated testing to actually test for it, didn't do the appropriate blood screens. And so the recommendations of the Centers for Disease Control were that there had to be more robust and specific protocols for post-mortem investigations of deaths, and there had to be better data that was provided for it. We know today, and by the way, in the investigations that were conducted by these researchers out of Colorado, they found that the metrogeny levels in the death reports in the tox screens showed that anywhere from 16 to 4,800 nanograms per milliliter were found. The toxic dose level of kratom, which the Tampa Bay Times claims exists, does not. We don't know what it is, and obviously we're all concerned about whether or not kratom can be implicated in a death, and we want science to dictate that, not the opinions of a reporter, nor the opinions of those, however well-intentioned medical examiners there may be. We also pointed out that the Tampa Bay Times ignored the CDC warning on medical kratom-only death reports on these post-mortem toxicology testing protocols that were not documented in the reports that were used. And the CDC cited that the documentation of post-mortem toxicology testing protocols is needed in order to further clarify the extent to which kratom contributes to fatal overdoses. The CDC found that even within the states, there is not a consistent protocol that is required of medical examiners to do it. I'll give you an example of where this falls apart. In the state of Ohio, and this is something that I pointed the Tampa Bay reporters to and which they chose to ignore, in the state of Ohio, a mother sued the coroner in Ohio for failing to appropriately investigate the death of her son, which they attributed to metrogeny intoxication. When that lawsuit was filed and when the various subpoenas were being issued back and forth, we found that the coroner in Ohio destroyed the blood sample so that it could not be tested independently. That is what they call a spoliation of evidence. The Tampa Bay Times reporters know about this, refused to report on it. What they also found in the course of this lawsuit, which is continuing today, is that there was a tox screen ordered by an independent laboratory by the coroner. And when the subpoena was issued for the blood sample from that NMS Labs, the lab director there, or an official of NMS Labs, called the attorney that's representing this mother and informed them that they would not have called this a metrogeny death. And when the attorney asked the NMS Lab representative, well, what other substances were on the blood screen that might have been implicated in the death? And this individual said, well, there's a problem with that because the only thing that we were asked to test for by the coroner was metrogeny. Now, how can anyone with credibility say that that is a kratom death when, in fact, the facts don't support it and the evidence doesn't support it? And obviously, without there being sufficient protocols for post-mortem investigations, this kind of information is provably not reliable for anyone to rely upon. I would also point out that the Tampa Bay Times rejects completely the idea or concept that they might have a conflict of interest. They specifically say in their article on December 13th that the AKA accused the Times of engaging in a conspiracy with trial lawyers to publish this investigation. What I suggested to the Tampa Bay Times is that based on evidence that we had gathered from social media posts of one of the anti-kratom groups, that a prominent trial attorney had directed to the Tampa Bay Times the stories of those families who have tragically lost loved ones whom they attribute to be kratom-only deaths. And I pointed out that when this prominent trial attorney was making that recommendation to transfer those stories to the Tampa Bay Times, one of the individuals said, well, what should I say to the Tampa Bay Times? And that trial attorney said, just tell them, use my name. I'm all up in it with them. What does that mean? And I suggested that that was at least worth consideration in tainting the actual credibility of their story based on their reliance on trial attorneys. But they vigorously denied it. We have now learned that one of those prominent trial attorneys has indicated publicly that, in fact, he gave a grant or some financial support to the Tampa Bay Times. Now, I don't know whether that's true or not, but why would a trial attorney who is involved in litigation against these companies that make kratom products, who's trying to destroy the kratom industry and ban kratom, why would he say that he gave a financial support to the Tampa Bay Times for their investigation? We have to find the truth of this matter, because if this investigation was tainted by a conflict of interest, and clearly that would violate, in those circumstances, the journalistic ethics that are required by national organizations that recommend guidelines for such reporting, we ought to know. And this vigorous denial seems to be undermined at this point. We certainly deserve to have an answer to that question. And this one points out the actual statement by the attorney that did the social media post where he said, and I have no problem you using my name. I'm obviously out there with NPR, National Public Radio, I guess, and Tampa Bay Times. This financial support obviously is something we have to look at. So what is our objection here today? This sensationalized clickbait headline that says 100 died using kratom in Florida when it was touted as safe. We think that that's the issue that needs to be examined, and we look at more. Here's an example of a TikTok video that is out by the Tampa Bay Times where they mock a state legislator both in Nevada and in Louisiana. And they say, and you have to watch the TikTok video to see how biased and how unfair it is. Because what they do is point out that at the beginning of a legislative hearing, these legislators make comments like, is it a natural substance or synthetic? Obviously, this legislator in Nevada did not know much or anything about kratom at the time. And then in Louisiana, the legislator is shown on this TikTok video by the Tampa Bay reporter saying, the legislator saying, I haven't heard of this kratom, right? And then they make the conclusion that these legislators voted for it anyway. What they ignore is that then these legislators got to sit through hours of testimony, both pro and con, and after that evaluation, they determined to vote for the Kratom Consumer Protection Act, which simply puts regulations in place in order to protect consumers from adulterated kratom products. That's all it does. Is there anything that is a poster child for something that is so biased and so unfair as to accuse a legislator who goes through their due diligence in examining exactly what kratom is, who learns about it, listens to scientists and experts, and then to have them mocked by a reporter at the Tampa Bay Times for what purpose? On a TikTok video to promote their own self-interest to get more clicks in order to pursue some advantage that they think that provides the Tampa Bay Times with a credible report, one that is destroyed in terms of its credibility by their lack of fairness along the way. It is absurd that that would be the claim that is made by the Tampa Bay Times. The Tampa Bay Times then goes on to say that more than 530 people in Florida died from mixing kratom with one or more substances. Over 3/4 involved fentanyl. Think about what that statement says. They minimalize fentanyl, which the CDC and the FDA know is the substance that is causing the most overdose deaths in America today, and they try to equate that with kratom. There are people that are struggling with addictions around this country that are finding, according to the National Institute on Drug Abuse, help, harm reduction from these kinds of addictions, including fentanyl. And the Tampa Bay Times suggests that somehow fentanyl is a subsidiary player in this. Why isn't their article about fentanyl and what's happening in this country about that? Why isn't their story about how kratom can actually be helping people that are struggling with fentanyl and other kinds of substance addictions and helping them along the way. Why isn't there a story about the voices of Kratom, hundreds that I have personally heard at hearings across the country, saying Kratom saved my life? But instead, the Tampa Bay Times chose to focus on those people who claim that Kratom took the lives of a loved one, based on obviously concerning reports, but yet unverified reports of medical examiners, because there's not consistency in the way that they examine the actual toxicology reports. It is a sad day when we're allowed this kind of biased reporting to document what is not a problem in America today other than bad reporting. As I mentioned to you, the Centers for Disease Control said the most recent cases of fentanyl-related harm, overdose, and death are linked to illegally made fentanyl. There wasn't anything about illegal fentanyl in that article, only about Kratom and about how people are obviously using it along with fentanyl. The CDC also said is often mixed with heroin and or cocaine as a combination product with or without a user's knowledge. Now here's an interesting thing. Is it possible that there is a Kratom product that is out on the marketplace today that has been tainted with fentanyl because a bad actor in the Kratom vendor space is trying to spike sales by adding adulterated substances? It absolutely is the case that it's happening, and we at the American Kratom Association work vigorously every day to try to get that kind of product off of the marketplace. I can tell you that the American Kratom Association has submitted more than 85 complaints to the Food and Drug Administration over the last 3.5 years, all identifying with documentation, with proof. And the Tampa Bay Times reporters know this and failed to report it. 85 of those complaints to the FDA, and not one single prosecution. Not one. So the problem here today, as I stand here, is not that there are Kratom manufacturers who are actually manufacturing safe products, labeling them properly, but rather an FDA that refuses to do the job that the statutes require them to do to protect the American public. The FDA refuses. In 85 cases of illegal labeling on Kratom products, making illegal therapeutic claims, refuses to do a thing about them, not a single prosecution. We wonder why the American people are so frustrated with these circumstances. We know today that if you look at the information from the Gallup poll, the American people have lost confidence in the TV news and newspapers, and today they're at near historical lows, and last December found the record low tying rating of honesty and ethics in journalism. I don't think that the journalists at the Tampa Bay Times are dishonest people. I think they got caught up, swept up in this wave of disinformation peddled by the FDA, and decided to take one path. And one path was to demonize Kratom, because guess what? The story about people being saved from addiction, having their lives saved, isn't going to be that clickbait headline. It's not going to be the thing that drives readers to it. That's a feel-good story. And the truth about Kratom is that Kratom has saved the lives of many Americans. Kratom offers an off-ramp from addictions that are very difficult. Most people in America use Kratom today merely to have an increase in energy and increased focus. At higher serving sizes, people are finding that it helps them relieve feelings of anxiety. And then at higher serving sizes, they find people that are having relief. The Tampa Bay Times mocked our reliance upon a survey that was done by Johns Hopkins University of nearly 3,000 Kratom consumers, 87% of whom experienced and reported relief from withdrawal symptoms. And the 35% were completely free of the drug that they were taking, replacing with Kratom to manage acute and chronic pain. That's a story that at least should have been told with some balance in the Tampa Bay story. But this was a gotcha moment for the Tampa Bay Times, and they decided to focus only on those stories that were convenient to the message that they were peddling. We're here today asking the Tampa Bay Times to do a couple of things. We asked them to rescind their deadly dose stories because they are not supported by the facts, and certainly rebalance the article, restore the integrity of the investigative reports on Kratom, remove the biased and unsupported claims of Kratom-only deaths until and if we could allow for a complete examination of those deaths with some sort of a consistent evaluation of what actually happened. I made the offer to the Tampa Bay Times that if they could collect the tox screens and the blood samples of those 46 deaths, if they're available, and let them submit it to an independent laboratory to examine what other substances may have been involved, just as was done with other post-mortem investigations where they found in Colorado, and the Tampa Bay Times said no. We offered to pay for it, and they said no. Is this a search for the truth? No. Unfortunately, it is a search for a clickbait headline, and we hope that they can change that. I think that the Tampa Bay Times needs to remove the biased and embarrassing reports on those state legislators who were doing their jobs, who were trying to find out the truth about kratom. And what the Tampa Bay Times ignored was the effort that these state legislators made in order to examine what kratom was, what benefits it provides, what safety risks are associated with its use. And they came to a considered decision after listening to the evidence, listening to experts, and hearing from the critics, hearing from the families who experienced losses with their loved ones who believe that kratom is responsible for it. And after all of that, came to a determination that a responsible regulatory framework needed to be implemented, that proper labeling needed to be on it, on those products. And what the Tampa Bay Times report said was it does nothing. They suggested that these laws don't do anything to control kratom in the United States. And in fact, they do. And on its face, it is silly to make that claim. I think the Tampa Bay Times needs to figure out how they can restore the integrity of these stories. And finally, I would argue for the solution. Science should dictate public policy on kratom, not the opinions. And I would put the FDA's claims about the safety of kratom in the opinion category because they themselves have now done it because they are unwilling to testify in a court of law under oath about their purported dangers of kratom. We think that kratom products should be regulated by the Food and Drug Administration, but until the FDA comes to their senses and accepts their responsibility, then the states have to protect consumers, and that's why we have gone to the states and why 11 states have passed the Kratom Consumer Protection Act, and we suggest that many more. Kratom products should be labeled with clear information on the contents, and they should give instructions for safe use. I think the Tampa Bay Times reporters agree with that. I think they should highlight that and not castigate state legislators who try to do that and not criticize the American Kratom Association for advocating for it. And we believe that every adulterated kratom product should be removed from the marketplace. We don't think they should be there. If you read the Tampa Bay Times, they act like the American Kratom Association is facilitating these companies that are out there with adulterated kratom products. We are not. We deny it, and it's wrong what the Tampa Bay Times said. We think the time has come for there to be a fair and balanced representation of what the kratom community is, to hear the voices of the kratom consumers in Florida and around the country. I offered dozens of kratom consumers who have that very message to the Tampa Bay Times. Look at their stories. Do you hear those voices? You hear a vague reference to some people claim it helps them, but you look at the stories that they chose to highlight, all those people who claim to have a family member who died, all of whom are seeking product liability claims by trial attorneys that seem to be focused on it. And where does the attack come by the Tampa Bay Times on the companies? Those that are being targeted by those trial attorneys, and yet they say they're not influenced by the trial attorneys in their stories today. I think the evidence contradicts that, and I think it's time for a fair and balanced review of all of that. We're here today because we want the voices to be heard, and so I would invite any other kratom consumer from Florida that would like to take this microphone to tell their story, and hopefully the Tampa Bay Times, who are here, will listen to them. Anyone like to step up?
I'm Brent. You're in the kratom kava capital of the world. We have 95 kava bars here, and for thousands of years, there's no documented deaths in Indonesia from kratom. In thousands of years, not one death in Indonesia, where all the kratom comes from. Why is that? Because when you bring something to America, they're doing the buffet. They're doing this, they're doing that. Kratom really helps with withdrawals. When you can't score drugs from your drug dealer, what do? You do kratom and kava, okay? It's changed my life. I was a lifelong drug addict and alcoholic. Do I abuse kratom? You better believe it, from the morning to night. But you know what I don't do? I haven't touched alcohol or drugs in 4 years. And I thank AA, and I thank God, and I thank Kratom for saving my life. This is something that even if you do abuse it, will not kill you. You will not get pulled over and go to jail. You will not fight with your girl. Your bank account will not go negative. You will not die. These are all things that happen to me when I drink alcohol and do drugs. And thank God there's something better. So let's not freaking ban Kratom. And TBT, their real headquarters where I live is in downtown St. Pete. This is not it. The St. Pete Times bought the TBT, and all the people who wrote about this are in the downtown office. So on December 28th, let's do the biggest rally ever and do it at the real headquarters for the Tampa Bay Times in downtown St. Pete. I'm Brent with Botava. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Anyone else like to speak?
Hi, I'm a 55-year-old construction worker, and Kratom helps me greatly with my daily chronic pain. I've never abused opioids, and one time I fell off a roof and had to spend 5 days at Tampa General. They had me on drip morphine and Percocet, which is oxycodone. When I ran out of that, when they sent me home, I just did like 5 grams, 1 teaspoon of Kratom a day, and I had 0 withdrawals. I went to Switzerland this year. I was away from doing any Kratom or anything else for 7 days, had no withdrawals, and I use it daily. And I think we just need to use it responsibly, unadulterated, and have regulations so that the active ingredient, we know what we're getting, not 5 milligrams this time, 500 the next time. And I think it's my birthright to use plant medicines to help my my work skills. I certainly wouldn't be able to put in the hours in construction that I am now using Kratom. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else?
Sure, why not? Okay. So, I find it really interesting when this article first came out. I knew it was, by all appearances, it was bought and paid for, the opinions, because they were stating, saying 48 people died with this in their system and only Kratom alone, and I didn't believe that for one moment. I've been consuming Kratom for about 8 or 9 years before I even got into this industry. I've seen so many people who've gotten their lives back because of Kratom. I've seen lots of people die from opioids, many people over the years. And if they would have had Kratom available to them, I don't think they would have been gone right now. I helped a friend actually that I met through an event that was on Suboxone for years. Before that, she was on heroin and all kinds of other terrible things. And I didn't know this, but when I gave her some of the stuff that I had, the next morning she decided not to go to the Suboxone clinic. So she was effectively able to stop Suboxone after years with the use of Kratom, and now she got her life back. She's, it changes people's lives, and it's very stigmatized. It always has been. I remember 7 years ago when you'd have to kind of hide your Kratom because people would look at it and go, oh, what is that? And they had all these, preconceived notions about what it does and what it is. But the thing is, it's not an opiate, okay? It is a plant that grows, that's in the coffee family. It's literally a tree, okay? And it is so much safer. I will sit here and say that you cannot die from Kratom. I don't have, okay, you would have to consume so much that they don't even know, like Max said, in order to actually, be hurt from it. The most that's going to happen to you is you're going to get sick. But how much aspirin can you take before you can overdose? How much alcohol do you have to drink before you can die from it? I've never seen anybody have anything negative happen to them from just the use of Kratom. And so I think that, yes, as there needs to be regulation for sure. There are people out here that might be doing things unsavourily, but they need to stop trying to, I think it's the pharmaceutical companies that are essentially trying to, throw this plant away because they don't like the competition. So, I've seen it time and time again. Lots of people use it when they work out. People use it when they have chronic pain. People use it for energy. That's what it's for. It's not just for people in one demographic. It's for everybody, And, I'm just grateful for this plant, and I'm grateful to see how many lives it's saved, and for the AKA. Thank you.
Thank you. We'll go ahead and end it here. Thanks to everyone for participating. I hope that the people of Florida and across the country that are reading the Tampa Bay Times hear the voices of the Kratom consuming public, the real voices. And let's see if we can reset this. We hope that the Tampa Bay Times will rescind their stories, take down the clickbait headline, and let's have a responsible discussion about Kratom going forward. And listen to the FDA. The FDA says we have not yet determined whether Kratom is dangerous or not. Science should dictate this, not the opinions of some bureaucrat at the FDA, and not the opinions of a reporter, and not the opinions of a medical examiner that is misled by the FDA's narrative up to this point. So thanks to everyone. Glad to answer any questions if anyone has them from the press. And Kirby, I know you're here. You're welcome to ask any questions you like. I didn't think so. I offered to meet with the Tampa Bay Times reporters and their editors, and they refused. This isn't a quest for the truth. This is a quest to validate their opinion about it, and I hope we can come to some position in the future that we can actually tell the truth about Kratom as we go forward. For all of the people, including those who believe that Kratom is responsible for the death of their loved one, because they deserve the truth as much as anyone. So thanks to everyone for being here.